Good afternoon, everyone. This is the pre-launch news conference for the Landsat Data Continuity Mission to be launched on a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket. And here to talk about the spacecraft, the mission, and the launch coming up is David Jarrett, the LDCM Program Executive from NASA headquarters. Omar Baez, the NASA Launch Director from the Kennedy Space Center. Vernon Thorpe, the Program Manager for NASA Missions from the United Launch Alliance. Ken Schweer, the LDCM Project Manager from the Goddard Space Flight Center. And First Lieutenant Jennifer Kelly, the Launch Weather Officer from the 30th Operations Support Squadron at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And we'll begin with opening remarks from David Jarrett. Dave?
Thanks, George. It's a great day to be here at the Vandenberg Air Force Base. The entire LDCM team is really excited to be launching our new observatory in just a few days. A lot of people from all over the country have done an awesome job in getting our spacecraft ready to fly. On behalf of NASA's Earth Science Division, I would like to thank you all for joining us here today to share in that excitement. The Landsat Data Continuity Mission is a collaboration between NASA and the U.S. Geological Survey. This partnership has been going strong now for over 40 years, and LDCM is the next in a long line of Landsat satellites, as shown in this timeline. Please show the timeline. It's begun in 1972 with the launch of Landsat 1. The Landsat program has been providing uninterrupted observations ever since. With its evolutionary new instruments, the operational land imager and the thermal infrared sensor, LDCM will be the best Landsat spacecraft yet in terms of improved capabilities and the amount of data returned compared with previous Landsat missions. After launch, LDCM will join 16 other NASA research satellites in our Earth Science program, as shown in this video. LDCM, together with Terra, Aqua, other missions, will contribute to monitoring, understanding, and managing the land resources needed to sustain life, such as food, water, and forests, and will help us study and understand the effects of both natural forces as well as the impact of a population of 7 billion people on these critical resources. The NASA Earth Science program aims to understand the Earth as a complex, integrated system. LDCM uniquely provides accurate measurements of the land and coastal ocean areas that are not provided by other NASA research satellites. When coupled with the broad array of other NASA satellite measurements of atmospheric and oceanic properties, the Landsat data will allow us to understand why many natural land change processes are occurring and what those changes and processes mean for life and land, on land and in coastal areas. LDCM's land cover observations are critical in maintaining our ability to monitor and understand global change. Around the world, Landsat measurements are considered to be the gold standard for Earth surface observations because of the stringent calibrations that we put our instruments through to maintain their accuracy while on orbit. With the launch on Monday, LDCM will continue the Landsat legacy well into the future. Go LDCM.
Thank you, Dave. And now to Omar Baez, the NASA Launch Director from Kennedy, for our launch coming up. Omar?
Thank you, George. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending today's brief. I am again fortunate to be representing scores of men and women from NASA's Launch Services Program, the Goddard Space Flight Center, and our partners United Launch Alliance and Orbital Science Corporation. These folks have been dedicated to analyzing and fabricating and assembling and preparing and testing the Atlas and the Landsat Data Continuity Mission set for launch this Monday morning at 10:02 in the morning. We're utilizing the Atlas V. It's a two-stage mission utilizing a single-engine Centaur. This will be NASA's first flight of the Atlas V from Space Launch Complex 3. Could we roll the short video we have on the This is the Atlas V booster arriving at Space Launch Complex 3, and this is the erection sequence. A little bit different than the East Coast, where this is the place where it's going to launch from versus a VIF and a later movement, which is quite different. This occurred in the fall. This is the Centaur going up, and that is powered by an RL-10 Pratt & Whitney engine. That stage utilizes hydrogen and oxygen, and it generates 21,900 pounds of thrust. There's LDCM in the encapsulated in the fairing. This occurred on the 25th of January. Keep in mind, in parallel, we were working the TDRS K mission on the East Coast while this work was going on. We were in the short strokes of launching that one. This is the LDCM mission, or satellite, in the encapsulated fairing being lowered onto the Centaur. As I said, we were working the TDRS K mission, which we successfully launched on Wednesday. The team transitioned from the East Coast to the West Coast. We completed the flight readiness review on Wednesday. Yesterday we held our mission dress rehearsal, and this morning we held our NASA launch readiness review. We are going to have a short reconvene tomorrow morning to close out the results of a couple of engineering reviews and to assess the schedule. We've got to do some ordnance connections, and unfortunately today the weather's not cooperating with us with the threat of lightning. Lightning and ordnance is not a thing that combines real well. And so we're trying to wait out the weather. The team times out early this evening, so we've got to be able to get that work done. If we don't, then we'll have to reassess the schedule, and it's too early to tell. We just got to rely on Mother Nature and what she throws at us. But if all goes well, on Monday we start the count at T-minus 7 hours, which will occur at 2:22 in the morning, very early. Power up the Centaur at 2:47 in the morning, and start the MST roll at 5:22. The management team will be in place at 5:30 in the morning for call to stations. At 7:22, we get into our first hold at T-minus 2 hours for a 30-minute hold, at the conclusion of which we will pull the team for concurrence to proceed into cryogenic tanking. And tanking should start shortly thereafter at 8:07 in the morning. We will then enter a 10-minute hold at T-minus 4 minutes, and the spacecraft will transition to internal power by that time. I will give concurrence for the team to end our terminal count and release the hold at 4 minutes. And the expected T0, as I said, was 10:02 in the morning, and hopefully we can get there. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, George.
All right, thank you, Omar. And now to Vernon Thorpe, the Program Manager for NASA Missions from United Launch Alliance, who will talk about the Atlas V and the flight. Vern?
Hey, thank you, George. We are privileged and happy to be here today, just 3 days from the launch of the LDCM satellite and only 9 days from our last launch, the TDRS K mission for NASA. We started integrating LDCM onto Atlas about 4 years ago, and we began building the vehicle in Decatur, Alabama nearly 2 years ago. During that time, and continuing through processing of the satellite and the launch vehicle here at Vandenberg, we've worked closely with NASA and our other mission partners to get us to this day, and on Monday we hope to a successful launch. The ability to successfully execute this launch rate, launches back-to-back less than 2 weeks apart, and to place 2 critical missions into orbit in less than 2 weeks is a testament to our dedicated, skilled, and experienced workforce. It's also a testament to the effectiveness of our partnership with our NASA customer. That partnership has allowed us to work closely with NASA to conduct a detailed review of all the telemetry data that came from our Atlas launch last week. And this preparation is just part of our disciplined and rigorous process to ensure continued mission success one launch at a time. The result will be that TDRS-K launched on January 30th, and LDCM will get into orbit and be able to provide important services and data that will benefit the entire world. This will be ULA's second launch of 2013. It will be the 36th Atlas V mission that we've flown since the beginning of the EELV program, and it will be ULA's 68th launch in just over 6 years. This will also be our first Atlas launch for NASA from Vandenberg since December of 1999. We were out here then. I think we were flying an Atlas IIAS. And that flew in Orbit Slip 3 as well in December of 99. Since that time, we've launched a lot of Delta IIs from Vandenberg, and we've launched Atlases for other customers, but this will be the first NASA Atlas since that EOS launch in 99. LDCM will launch aboard an Atlas V 401 configuration. That's probably our most basic launch vehicle configuration for Atlas with the 4-meter fairing. We've got a booster powered by the RD Amros RD-180 engine, the Pratt & Whitney Rocketdyne RL-10A-4 engine on the upper stage, the Centaur stage. And this mission does not require the use of any solid rocket boosters. I have a video I'd like to show. This is the launch sequence that we'll see on Monday morning. It'll give you a preview of what you can expect. So here's the MST rolling back in preparation for launch. When we light those booster engines, they'll be generating about 900,000 pounds of thrust to get the vehicle off the ground. And since this vehicle does not have any SRBs, the first major event that you'll see during flight will happen about 4 minutes after liftoff. 4 minutes in, we will have used up all the propellants in that booster stage, and we will give the command to shut down the booster engine, what we call booster engine cutoff. You'll see that coming up here in a moment. After we shut down that booster engine, about 6 seconds later, we'll give the command to separate from the Centaur upper stage. We will then begin preparing the Centaur engine for the first of several burns. That first burn will last approximately 11 minutes. After it lights, we'll jettison the payload fairing about 8 seconds after start of the engine. And that first 11-minute burn will place Centaur with the LDCM satellite into a slightly elliptical orbit, about a 90 nautical mile by 370 nautical mile altitude. We'll then have a coast phase of 55 minutes to get into position for the second burn. Second burn will be a little bit less than 2 minutes, and that will raise the orbit to approximately a 360 nautical miles circular orbit. We will then separate from the spacecraft a few minutes later and begin the usual series of maneuvers to back away from the spacecraft and ensure no recontact or contamination. And then one thing that's a little bit unusual about this mission is we will conduct a third burn of Centaur, and that will actually place the Centaur into an Earth escape orbit. We always try to put the Centaur into some sort of a disposal orbit so it won't interfere with anything in the future. LDCM incorporates sensing and data capture improvements that will benefit many nations, and we're proud of the role that ULA will play in helping to continue Landsat's important legacy of Earth observation. ULA is proud to serve a critical role in delivering government and commercial payloads to orbit, and we are focused on perfect product delivery for this and every mission we launch for NASA and all of our other customers. And once again, I'd like to say thank you to all of our mission partners, all the people who have helped us get to this point, and the entire ULA team looks forward to a successful launch on Monday. Back to you, George.
Thank you, Vern. And now to Ken Schweer, the LDCM project manager from Goddard Space Flight Center. Ken.
Thank you, George. 16,760 miles an hour. That's how fast the Landsat satellite is going to be going in 3 days. Once on station 438 miles above our homes, the LDCM satellite will orbit our planet every 99 minutes. LDCM's imagery resolution, or pixel size, is about the size of a baseball infield. And the imaging track on Earth is a 115-mile swath, which leads to the LDCM satellite observing the entire Earth every 16 days. Once the LDCM satellite separates from the launch vehicle, the satellite goes through an automated sequence where the control system will maneuver the satellite for solar array deployment. Next, the satellite communications will be configured for ground contact. This allows the mission operations team to verify the state of the health of the satellite. This all happens in just about 20 minutes after separating from the launch vehicle. The LDCM spacecraft was built by Orbital Sciences in Gilbert, Arizona, where both the OLI and TIRS instruments were delivered and integrated to the spacecraft. The Operational Land Imager, OLI, was built by Ball Aerospace in Boulder, Colorado, and the Thermal Infrared Sensor, TIRS, was built by NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. The LDCM satellite was shipped from Phoenix, Arizona, Gilbert, Arizona, and arrived at Vandenberg Air Force Base, California on December 19th. Since then, we've been preparing the satellite for launch. Can you roll the first video, please? Here you can see our thermally controlled transporter sitting inside the Astrotech processing facility at Vandenberg, lifting the lid, pulling out the strong back in the spacecraft, which is bagged for contamination purposes. Then we place it on the stand so we can do all our post-shipment operations and make sure everything is fired properly during the shipment. One of the very critical aspects when we get on orbit right away is to deploy our solar array. So this is one last time that we call release, first motion and release of the solar array. You can see it popping out there. We don't walk it all the way out. We just want to make sure that that mechanism operated. We then fold it back in and stow it for flight. After the spacecraft is fueled and all the testing is done, we actually mount it to the payload attach fitting, which is actually the fitting that will install to the Atlas V launch vehicle. Here you can see the Atlas V fairings being brought into the clean room. The two halves will then be prepared to encapsulate the satellite. Here you can see this is kind of a bittersweet moment. This is the last time we ever get to see our satellite that we've been working on for years. After the encapsulation, the team goes through a whole process to prepare environmental systems inside, purging the instruments. This is all to make sure that our satellite stays clean. All in preparation to be transported out to the pad. You can see here it happened in the wee hours of the morning on January 25th. The NASA Goddard Space Flight Center role for LDCM is to manage the entire mission for NASA's Earth Science Division, which includes acquiring the spacecraft, the instruments, the launch vehicle, overall mission systems engineering, and early orbit operations. The U.S. Department of Interior, through the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, is responsible for the ground system, mission operations, and the data processing and archive system. After launch in about 3 months of NASA checkout, USGS takes over operational control of the satellite and the mission, at which time LDCM will be renamed Landsat 8. Can you roll the next video, please? The LDCM satellite will be controlled from the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. The satellite will send down about 400 images a day to ground stations in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Fairbanks, Alaska, and Svalbard, Norway. Back in 2008, USGS made the Landsat data records free to the public, which resulted in yearly downloads going from thousands to millions. This has spawned an explosion in the necessary and exciting local to global research. Landsat will send down more than 700 additional images to go into USGS's 3.5 million image archive. Just this past July, the Landsat program celebrated its 40th anniversary of continuous coverage. My team is so excited to play a vital role in continuing this data record and NASA and USGS partnership. LDCM will continue to describe the human impact on Earth and the impact of Earth on humanity, which is vital for accommodating 7 billion people on our planet. I encourage all of you to stay tuned for the LDCM science briefing immediately following this press conference. Over the past year, my LDCM team has rose to several challenges and stayed within cost, schedule, and technical excellence. I am so proud of my team, and LDCM is ready for launch. Back to you, George.
Thank you, Ken. And now we'll look at Monday's weather forecast with First Lieutenant Jennifer Kelly, the launch weather officer from the 30th Operations Support Squadron here at Vandenberg. Lieutenant Kelly?
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. February is the most atmospherically dynamic month for the Central California coast, marked by an alternating pattern of high and low pressure systems moving through the area. Currently, we have a low pressure system moving through Vandenberg Air Force Base, producing rain, strong winds, and possible lightning strikes. The clouds associated with this low pressure system will depart tomorrow as high pressure builds in behind it. This will provide improving conditions, clearing skies, and an end to precipitation. Looking at the satellite image, you can see from our IR image, you can see the cloud cover associated with that low system over Southern California. Upstream or to the northwest, you can see the clearing associated with that high pressure system. By Monday, high pressure will be well established with only thin cirrus clouds remaining overhead. A thermal trough will provide a slight offshore flow early in the morning, preventing the development of the marine layer. Models are agreeing that weather conditions for the launch will be favorable. The forecast for the launch window of 10:02 to 10:50 local on February 11th will be cirrus clouds of 1/8 coverage from 20,000 to 22,000 feet, unlimited visibility, winds out of the east at 8 to 12 knots, and temperatures in the mid to low 50s, providing an overall probability of violation at T0 for 0%. And finally, the 24-hour scrub forecast for February 12th will see little change to conditions as the high pressure remains the dominant feature. Cirrus clouds of 1/8 coverage from 20 to 22,000 feet, unlimited visibility, winds remain out of the east at 8 to 12 knots, and temperatures in the low 50s, providing an overall probability of violation at T0 of 0%. Thank you. George?
Thank you, Lieutenant Kelly. And we're ready now to take questions. We'll take questions here in the room, and then we'll also take questions on Twitter hashtag AskNASA. But let's begin here in the room. Please give your name and affiliation when the microphone comes to you. And we'll start here with Justin Ray.
Thanks. Justin Ray with spaceflightnow.com for Omar. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the two engineering topics that remain open and if those are potential showstoppers for launching on Monday.
I don't believe that they're showstoppers. One of them deals with some bench testing that occurred on the FTI and U, a test or a unit that was being tested. The other item is a revisit of the RL-10 anomaly that occurred on the GPS mission last fall, and it's an update on the ongoing investigation that's going on there.
Hi, Nora Wallace, the Santa Barbara News Press. Can someone address the overall cost of the mission?
Yes, the overall cost for NASA's contribution to the mission is $855 million. That was from the beginning of the formulation of the mission all the way through handover to USGS.
Janine Scully, Santa Maria Times and Lompoc Record. So when is the next meetup in terms of when you're going to reconvene and assess if you can keep moving forward? Is it tonight? I think I got a little lost.
Okay, so what we're trying to do is do our final ordnance connects, and we can't do that while we're in a lightning watch. So if we get that release by around 4 o'clock this afternoon, we've got about 3 hours of work we have to complete. Any later in that, and our team that specializes in doing that times out, and we'd have to reschedule that event for tomorrow, hoping that the weather cleans up. We do have a LR reconvene tomorrow at 9 a.m., and that'll assess the items that I mentioned, and it will also, if in case we don't get the ordnance connected tonight, we might have to reassess whether Monday's a viable date or not.
Any further questions here in the room? We have one down from Nora again.
Justin, again, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the weekend schedule. What other work would be going on at the pad? And if you had to delay ordnance into the weekend, what does that mean?
We have to finish up our final closeouts, Justin. Lift all the deck plates and so forth, reposition all the stuff that might be affected by blast. And that takes about a shift's work during daylight hours.
Any additional questions here in the room.
Maybe for Ken. We've seen the information about the number of downloads by the public spiking in the last few years on this imagery. Can you explain what your views are on the fascination with this information by the public? We understand why you're interested and why the science guys are interested, but...
Well, that's probably a good two-part question. I'll address that, but for the science briefing, they can go in a lot to the science aspect. From the engineering side, if you go to the USGS website and just start exploring all the different images throughout the world, you know, whether it's associated with cities growing or changes in water concentration, and what the scientists and everyone do with that to help manage and let people know. It's just, I mean, I get on that website and look at these images, and it's just fascinating to think that all of this now is free to everyone. So we have so many people throughout the world doing research and investigations where it used to cost a good chunk of money just to get the data. So now the researchers can spend all of that on their systems and everything to do that instead of acquiring the data. I mean, it's fascinating, and to think that there's a 40-year data record and we get to continue that, is what really, really makes Landsat, to me, such a special mission out of all the missions I've ever worked.
What is the future for Landsat? Is there a Landsat 9 on the books, or?
Right now, NASA and the USGS are in discussions with the administration as well as our other stakeholders, trying to determine exactly what path we're going to take forward.
All right, I think we have some Twitter questions. Give the mic to Steve Cole.
Okay, thank you, George. First question is, at launch, what is the initial heading of the LDCM satellite? Is it going towards the north or the south as it leaves Vandenberg?
Sure. I can take. You want to go?
Sure. When we first launch, we are going to be heading just west of south. I think on the compass we'll be heading about 186 degrees. So this is a southern launch.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, will there be an underfly of LDCM with Landsat 7 to cross-calibrate the data between the missions?
Yes, we have that planned in our first 90 days of checkout. Of course, the first week we check out the spacecrafts. The following couple of weeks we check out the instruments. We get them prepared for that. And about day 38 is our first opportunity where we have the underfly with Landsat 7, which is, you know, my project scientist says it is the best way to validate these sensors from previous missions. So that is in our plan to do.
All right, that's all the questions we have on Twitter. Follow-up, Nora?
Maybe for Mr. Jarrett, kind of a two-part question. If the discussions are ongoing about Landsat 9, what's your argument to the people above you in terms of keeping the program?
Because of the legacy of the data record and the enormous use of it lately, since the data went free worldwide, we've had a lot more interest in using that data. And it's very important to keep this record going so that both the scientists can study land changes over time, but there's also a lot of other applications being used, and they'll go into those later this afternoon. But we use it for forest management and water management and things like that, not only in this country but around the world.
So one more, sorry. So I forgot who spoke about the pixel imagery being about the size of a baseball field. How does that compare to previous Landsat missions in terms of advancement?
I believe it's the same. We continue, that's the same, and that is the appropriate swath that we want to be able to view basically lands change, human impacts to the Earth, and allows us that 16-day coverage.
Steve, we got some additional Twitter.
More questions that come in. How will the LDCM orbit compare to that of Landsat 7?
We're in the same orbits, and we're actually going to follow 8 days behind Landsat 7. And that's to continue the data record, and also have, would be every 8 days, we have Landsat imagery on the surface of the entire Earth.
And the other question follow on from this person is, will Landsat 7 be decommissioned at some point?
Well, Landsat 7 will be decommissioned when it's through, but it's doing a great job. Landsat 5 has just finished, which you're probably aware of, 28 years on orbit, which is just an incredible, and I think it may have set, might be in the Guinness Book of World Records, is that right? Or we're trying to? But anyway, yeah, that we're bringing that mission has ended, Landsat 5.
Any additional questions? All right, in that event, our next briefing, which is going to be following immediately, is the Landsat Mission Science Briefing. Thank you very much.